Hello everybody, it's Chris Thomas again. This video is about safe locations. And as I started to study and prepare for this video a week ago or so, I realized that I really have to include the conditions that we are protecting ourselves against. I feel this is very important because if you don't know what you're protecting yourself against, how can you properly prepare and protect yourself? Now, speaking of preparation, your safe location is very much affected by the area that you live in, obviously. But it's also very much involved in the time frame from about 2 to 1 year before the pole shift down to the main event of the pole shift. Now there'll be 3 periods of time in my estimation that I'm going to cover anyways, in my estimation, that are most important. The first time period will be 1 to 2 years before the pole shift, and then the second time period is going to be in the last weeks before the pole shift, and then you have the pole shift itself. So those 3 levels I'll be dealing with first. Once we get that behind us, then what I'll be doing is I'll be looking at North America. I'll be looking at the West Coast, the southern states, and the East Coast of North America, and the plains. Now I've broken it down like into these 4 areas, because these areas are so completely different in that the rundown to the pole shift will affect them uniquely. So it's very important to get that really clear about what's going to be happening to these different areas. And of course, as many of my subscribers know, I use zetatalk.com as a reference. And like I know the public consciousness has been vilified against ZetaTalk. There's been a great deal of power that's been directed towards vilifying ZetaTalk, and these people who have done that will suffer in their own ways eventually. I have a different mind, and I look at something on its face value, and then of course you test that. And a person who is emotionally immature will tend to go with their emotions or other people's opinions to judge something. I'm different. I look at it, compare. Look at it again, compare it again. Look at it over here, now compare that with the other. And you keep, so if you read through ZetaTalk, you'll find that there's a very excellent mind at work behind the work. Now, I'm not suggesting being a ZetaTalk junkie, as I used to be back in the day. But you know, you want to test and make your own decisions, and in fact, that is all the way through ZetaTalk as you read it. The Zetas, that we say, are often saying that people have to make up their own minds about what they need to do. And so that's a little blurb on ZetaTalk. So I use ZetaTalk, and this will be your best resource for planning your safe locations, because in this video I can cover a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff I'm going from memory, some of it will be graphics, and some of it will be material that I'll be offering for people to read. But ultimately, if you live in Brisbane, you really should read Brisbane. Well, I've turned off the internet, but anyway, you really should read specifically for Brisbane. If you live in Virginia, West Virginia, two different. You got to read these links. So that's the preamble, and I'm not sure if I said this, but I'm going to say it again, that I'm going to be covering the West Coast, the southern states, the east coast of the U.S. and eastern Canada, and the plains. And as I've said, they all have unique characteristics that we have to look at. So that's what we'll be doing next. Okay, so this section is about the 1 to 2 years before the pole shift. By that time, it's likely that the President of the United States, the leader of China, and Putin and Cameron will have made an announcement about a rogue planet being in the solar system. Now, if you read my Planet X newsletter 4, actually it's going to be out in 5, they're already announcing surreptitiously the presence of Planet X's other foci, which is the dead sun, not the dead twin, that's something different. The dead sun that is 68 trillion miles away. Now, if you read my Planet X newsletter, issue 5, you'll read all about that. If you haven't heard of Planet 9, but you'll read my opinions on that. But anyways, they've announced that already. So it's likely that they will be announcing, maybe even this year, this fall, November, I think, in 2016. So if that announcement is made, then people, after the shock has worn off, probably 6 months, who knows, then there's going to be a change in the public about the awareness of Planet X, a great change, obviously. And this may lead to a run on food and equipment. And I think that manufacturers will ramp up and want to produce even more equipment. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. But anyways, when that announcement takes place, it will be a shakeup. And I suggest to not expect it to be a dramatic announcement. It'll be very metered. It'll be scripted very carefully. And so that'll be one influence by then that will have taken place. Another major thing is what I really want to cover here is the eastern seaboard of the United States. It involves Canada, but mainly it's the U.S. because of the New Madrid fault line. Now everyone's talking about the New Madrid fault line. I'm not going to talk about it here because when that fault line finishes adjusting, all the bridges on the Mississippi are going to be downed. That means that there's going to be no travel between the eastern seaboard and no ground travel and the continental United States. That means that people who live in this area here on the eastern seaboard, New England states, all the way down through Pennsylvania and into down to Texas and Florida, are going to have a difficult time getting supplies of food and equipment because of the breakdown of the bridges. Obviously, there will be helicopter, airplane travel between the two, but that will be limited, of course, and who knows how the airports are going to be affected. But most likely will be air travel, and I believe that the U.S. Administration will not be able to fulfill all the needs of people, the millions of people who live in this area. So what I'm going towards here is that I believe that once the New Madrid is finished adjusting, all the people who live from New York State down to Florida, Texas, are going to be starting their pole shift early, because the supply will not be made. Breakdown of who knows how that is going to affect gas lines, water lines, and electrical lines. So people who live in this area will have to prepare a year to 2 years earlier than the rest of us, because of the New Madrid fault line when that goes. And I may have mentioned this, but if you look at my Planet X newsletter 4, you will find the sequence of events to look for before New Madrid finally finishes its adjustments. So that is the message here. Is the big influence on the eastern seaboard of the United States. So if you live here, and there's millions and millions and millions of people who live here, then if you don't want to deal with that, you got to move. You have to move out. I know a lot of people don't want to move, but it's the reality. If you're staying, which I suspect almost everybody will, then you have to prepare sooner than everyone else. Okay, I think that's about it for that time period. Obviously, there will be many other things happening. I'll be doing more videos as I get more information, but that's what I really wanted to alert the millions of people here to. 1 to 2 years, I think, before the pole shift. That would be about 2021, 2022. Okay, this section is about the last weeks before the pole shift time period, and this will be characterized by a great deal of confusion. There'll be a lot of desperate people looking for answers. Planet X will be visible next to the sun as the second sun, and those people who didn't believe the announcement years previous to this will now be believing that we have a global catastrophe at hand, although they may not recognize it as a pole shift, but there'll be a great deal of fear, and I'm hoping that we're doing our part here for people to have somebody to turn to, and who knows what's going on, and to help people. So so people will be very desperate. Now, what people who live on this craton here will be a little bit more, ground would be a little bit more, quite a bit more stable. It's known as the Canadian Shield. So in the last weeks, obviously the plains of Utah and the Central Plains will be somewhat stable, but people who live in the southern states, in the Gulf states, Victoria, it'd be impossible. It's impossible. Near there'll be 200 to 300 foot tides going on. Very dangerous near any coast. California will have been devastated by earthquakes because of all the fault lines there, and that'll be unlivable in Los Angeles, California area. So it'll be very, very dangerous to travel. Another influence will be the military, especially in the US. They'll be blocking routes, controlling travel. So if hopefully you're not planning to travel to your safe location in the last weeks, and that would be, probably, who knows exactly, but I think in the last 6 months, 4 months, when Planet X becomes visible as a second sun on a regular basis. So that would be a very, very difficult time and very confusing. So we have the last week calendar. This comes off of the pole shifting, and basically this is property of Zeta Talk, and it's a good calendar because it's taken, the person who made this up took this information from the body of Zeta Talk. So you can pause the video here and you can examine this, and I can certainly provide the link to this, and it's a good thing to keep in mind, to have a copy of it. It's the last 60 days, and it has the rundown to the pole shift and all the events that are going to take place. So these are definitely red flags to watch for. And of course, the very most obvious will be the slowing rotation as the days get longer and longer. Now, Earth, people who live around the Atlantic will have full-on sun. Their days will be longer and longer, and the reason why people who live around the Atlantic Ocean will have more sun is because of the mid-Atlantic ridge is a massive magnet that will attach that will slow Earth's rotation and lock on to Planet X. With the Earth will lock on to Planet X with the mid-Atlantic ridge facing the sun, and this will cause and so when Earth comes to a stop, rotation-wise, then you'll have very, very long days. And anybody obviously living around the Pacific will have long nights. So, but this is the reason why Earth actually rotates to a stop. We stopped in orbit back in Christmas of 2003. I've explained that in other newsletters, and I believe in another video. But this is actual rotation stoppage. So that's the calendar and to look for. And so the next section I'll be getting into will be the actual conditions of the pole shift. Okay, so this little section is about plains dwellers. I think I've explained that you can expect all the rivers to flood far wider than one would expect, making travel in the aftertime necessary by boat. But also it's very important to remain hidden in your survival camps, because there'll be millions of people migrating into the plains looking for a safe land or a dry land. And of course the Missouri along here will block quite a few of these people trying to migrate this way. But they will find their way into the plains areas. So that is one issue of migrants. And as I've said before, I think it's wonderful that people could have some way of helping the migrants. But of course you have to protect yourselves against the marauding gangs and the thieves. And so there'd be a lot of that. So I think it's important to remain hidden for the first few for the first few years. And as I've said in the previous segments, and I'll say it again, if you have propane cooking equipment and enough propane to last you 2 to 3 years into the apple time, you can cook during the day without a smoke trail rising up. You don't want a smoke trail going into the sky that advertises where you are, so that the marauding gangs of thieves can find you. So that's why I'm pushing propane just for the first few years, because after that there will be die out, and people will have settled somewhat. There'll still be migrants, of course, but it'll be a little safer. Perhaps your community will have developed security fences, what have you, security detail, what have you, so you protect yourself better. So so that's the point I wanted to draw, is remaining hidden, because you don't have the trees, open plains. And another big factor is that there's a lot of consciousness about the survival consciousness that has been pushed these years, and without the understanding that it's a pole shift. And it means that they consider the sun to be just as bright, and it won't be for many years, as I've mentioned, as Zeta talks about. And so it's very important that you have lots of food supply, because growing will be difficult. And I know there's some good soil in these areas, but you've got to have the sunlight, and so you're at least going to have low light crops. So that's what I caution people about when they're talking about settling. If you live interior again in North America, I think it's very important, for example, to settle in an area where you could at least have a 1 or 2 days hike, or a week's hike to the sea. This will be the new seashore in this general area. So you can set up your camp, so you have at least a reasonable week-long trade route to the sea. So that way you can take advantage of the massive food that will be available from the sea in the aftertime. It's travel opportunities, trade opportunities, and food opportunities will be massive if you can somehow locate yourself near, in a safe, secure area, but near the sea. So that's very important. Foraging and for food, and fishing in the rivers is a source of food, but the sea is the best. So that's what I really like to push the people to think about in their plan, to see if they can locate near, close as they can to the sea, while we're still remaining secure. So as far as the plains are concerned, obviously there are a lot more. You have no concern about the pole shift waves, so that's good. But the biggest thing will be in the aftertime, is what I've always said, is the food will be the new gold, and food production will be the most important factor in your daily lives, in our daily lives. So that's what I wanted to just cover on plain living, is really try to avoid it and get close enough to the sea. Okay, let's take a look at what happens with karst. This is what happens when you have karst areas. This is Missouri. Now they're digging it out, but this is an example of what that people live on karst will have to deal with. Hopefully not have to deal with. So what we're going to move to now is a good start to choose your area is an earthquake history map. Now this is one for eastern U.S. and you can see the New Madrid area here. And so you can, these maps you can zoom in and you can choose your area and choose areas that that you like, that don't have too many earthquakes. Of course, the thinking is that if your area is right in the middle of these all these red dots here, then you may want to consider moving from there. You may have to anyways, because you may be dealing with pole shift wave thrust up into that area, certainly down in here. Or you may be dealing with other factors. So this is one way that you use to choose your area, your safe location. As you can see, it's pretty good up here. It's on that craton, that fairly old craton up here. That looks good. So you have lots of choice to choose in the U.S. Now, the other thing you have to watch for are karst areas, and this map shows you where they are. So there again, we're looking at a very good area up in, well, let me see. Well, it gets very specific. You have to be very specific about what you're looking for. So yeah, that's up in here. So you can see this area is looking good. Very little karst, no caves, right? Occurring under your survival camp. You don't want that. See, so looking good up here. So you have lots of choice. So then, earthquake history, karst, and of course here is the, now California really probably in the last weeks, maybe even in the last year before the pole shift, doesn't look very livable. There will be areas that are safer than others, but ultimately what will happen is pole shift action, and that is the wash from the Pacific wash coming in, you can see where it's going to wash right through into there. Actually, that is actually a pole melt, but it's just going to be unlivable in California area. So recommend that people move away from there and move back in the aftertime, after things settle down. So these are ways to tell what your area is going to look like when the ground is under stress. And but the biggest worry I have for people really is the eastern seaboard, because of the New Madrid is going to separate and split this area off from continental U.S., preventing travel and resupply. So people who live here, as I've said before, are going to have to prepare a year, 2 years ahead of time if you want to stay there. So we've got a lot going on, and so here I think we covered pretty much the continent. No doubt there'll be lots going on. The flooding is one other thing that is going to prevent travel in the aftertime. Um, Rivers are going to way go over the banks, and they're going to flood. So you're going to need a boat. So I'm suggesting that people invest in a little sailboat for for trade on the lakes, maybe even two or three of them, and put them aside um, for trade in the aftertime. Another thing I recommend is buying 2 or 3 years of supply of propane and cooking equipment using propane, so that you can avoid being detected. Now, I haven't mentioned this so far. You really don't want to be noticed by people by wood burning fires with a trail of smoke going up in the air, because then you'll be able to be traced by the remaining military, which is completely untrustworthy. So if you don't want to be located near any military, you also want to be remote, because you don't want to have to deal with marauding gangs, and because they'll be there, they'll be near the big cities. So you don't want to be near the big cities. Now, the one thing about central U.S., and probably the same with Canada, is that because the pole shift waves won't reach into the Great Lakes area, that means that these millions of people that live in these millions and millions of people live in this area are going to survive. They're going to survive into the aftertime, and that is good. But it also means there's going to be a large percentage of marauding gangs from these people who are going to be migrating, looking for people who have settlements. And you know what that means? That means food and equipment. Mainly it means food. So you don't want to be visible, especially for the first few years until things settle down. So that's why I recommend having propane cooking equipment and enough propane to get you 3 years of cooking. And you want to avoid being in a migration route. So you'll have to look at your area and determine whether there's a major valley or a major road that's still in existence where people will be walking along looking for help. Now, I also suggest it's wonderful if you have the ways and means to have a secure encampment where you could supply food for desperate people, food and water. That would be wonderful. Some people could set that up. Obviously, it would have to be, as I said, a secure encampment, and obviously, it's not going to be where you live. So, if you have the ways and means to do that, that would be wonderful, because we want the more people that survive, the faster civilization can rebuild. And because community is where it's at, and the aftertime, in my opinion, is going to be fabulous. I'm a big believer in the aftertime, because we're not going to be dealing with the drug companies, the corporations, the controlling government, and all the little minions running around with badges on them telling us what to do and what not to do. There will be a moral code between people, and that code will be of the old time code, where justice is swift, and and where the rewards of helping people will have the result of having friendships, and there won't be the technology disconnect. There will be drums and fire, and there will be food. There'll be hunting, there'll be foraging, there'll be fishing, there'll be hard work, and people will die and die happy. And the people who live will be joyful at every birth of every child. It will be a wonderful time, but you've got to survive, and that's what this was all about, is to help people get some ideas on how to survive the pole shift. Speaking of surviving the pole shift itself, basically you just have to be out of the wind, which means out of the raining rock. You don't want to be in a forest because you can be a forest likely to be struck by lightning and to be fires. You definitely want to be in some type of a bunker that is well drained. I must emphasize that it must be a well drained bunker, not a bunker that's originally designed for nuclear. The old consciousness of the nuclear bunker, because they didn't design them to drain well. You're going to have something that drains very, very well. So for the rain that will fall during the pole shift. In fact, all you really need is a trench that's on a slight incline in good, well-drained soil with a metal roof with handles underneath it, because you're only going to be there an hour. And I'm not a believer in caves because this is a heavy-duty pole shift. I'm not a believer in caves. I'm a believer in a trench with a metal roof, corrugated steel metal roof, and just screw some handles on the bottom of it. You could huddle behind a berm. You could put up a berm, and what you want to be is in the lee, the prevailing winds. Wherever the prevailing winds are, make sure that you're in the lee of the prevailing winds of your area. You could have yourself a culvert that's buried partially. There's all kinds of ideas about surviving the actual hour of the pole shift. But so raining rock, lots of rain. Be careful about flooding, overflowing of rivers, and of course you don't want to be in a rocky area where you can have rock fall come down on you. So people who want to ask questions, feel free. I've got a lot of ideas. I draw on Zeta Talk, as you know, and post them in the channel there, and I'll come up with some ideas. If in fact I even do specific locations for people. You'll have to be patient because depending on the demand. So that's my video on safe locations, and I hope you found this helpful. And let's all look forward to a peaceful after time. A peaceful after time. Thanks for watching.